Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's Global COVID-19 Show. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and it's my honor to convene this conversation around various aspects of COVID-19 and the pandemic. Today is episode 254. It's called Mapping Black Media. The Black Media Initiative at the Center for Community Media at Craig Newmark School of Journalism has just launched a map and directory of nearly 300 media outlets across the US that primarily serve Black communities. We're going to hear about the projects, and we're going to talk about two organizations that are aimed at Black communities in Louisville and elsewhere, and we will hear from their founders. We're also joined by Aaron Foley, director of the Black Media Initiative and the former chief storyteller of the city of Detroit. And you'll meet both of them. You'll meet all three of our guests in just a moment. Hi, everyone. I'm Sree. Thank you so much for being here. Please share this with your friends and family. We're live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. Tag your friends so that they can watch us live or watch us later. I'm the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism and the co-founder of Digimentors, a social, digital, and virtual events consulting company. Our motto, don't cancel your event without talking to us first, and don't plan your virtual event or hybrid event without talking to us. We've done events for 50 people and events for 100,000 people, and we bet your events in 2021 are somewhere in between. We love geeking out about events that are virtual or hybrid. If you haven't seen what we're doing here before, this is our 254th episode of this series. We started doing this during the pandemic, right at the beginning, and we did basically 250 episodes over 250 days, and then we decided to go to a once or twice a week format, and so that's what you're seeing now. This is the background of the show. In our first 250 episodes, we had 457 guests, including 257 women from 73 cities in 20 countries, including the chief scientist of the World Health Organization. You can find our archives on youtube.com/Sreenet. We're in partnership with Scroll Global and Scroll.in. Big thank you to our producers, Rose Horowitz at Rose Horowitz 31 and Vandana Menon, Vandana_Menon. You will see both of them tweeting live, so please do follow them. And please tag your friends right now. Tell them to watch live or watch later. Are you ready for our episode tonight? We want to hear from you. Tell us where you're watching from, please. And now I'm ready to bring on to the show our guests. Our guests are Devon Christopher Johnson, who is founder and CEO of Blue Life Media Group. Minda Honey, at Minda Honey, founder of Taunt, a Louisville, Kentucky-based alt-indie publication elevating the voices of the unaccounted. Such a beautiful description. And Aaron Foley is director of the Black Media Initiative and former chief storyteller of the city of Detroit. Devon will be joining us in just a minute, but we'll start by saying hello first to Aaron and to Minda. So here we go. Hi, folks.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor.
Yeah, thank you for being here. We are grateful for you, grateful to you for your time tonight on a Tuesday night. Thank you for being here. My first question always is, how are you? Where are you? And how's your family been handling the pandemic? So we'll start with Minda and then go to Aaron.
So I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm doing really well, all things considered. I feel very fortunate and blessed that my family has been able to stay safe and whole and employed throughout this entire pandemic, particularly considering that both of my parents are immunocompromised and I have a very young niece. And so I just hope that, my family continues to stay well and that all of your families stay well as well.
Yeah, so important, and I'm glad everybody's okay. And you also touched upon the importance of employment. It is one of the things that we will talk about, what's happening with journalists and the media profession. But I'm glad everything's okay. Let's go to Aaron to hear the same question to him.
Sure. I mean, things are going well. I am here in New York. My family is back in Detroit. And I have not been to see them recently because of everything going on. But to sort of make the best of it is just kind of doing this work around what I do at CUNY, working with all the fabulous outlets that have come forth in the last couple of weeks, meeting all these different people, and just trying to finish the year out strong, I guess.
Terrific. Let's bring on Devon. Hi, how are you? Thank you for being here. What I'm asking everyone is, how are you? Where are you? And how's your family been handling the pandemic?
Did you guys both go already? So
yeah, they've gone. It's your turn, Devon.
Right, sorry, I'm an old man trying to get on to streaming platform. My name is Davon Christopher Johnson. I am coming to you from Harlem. Doing okay. The beginning of the pandemic was tough. Actually, 3 relatives came down with COVID-19. They luckily survived. So my grandmother's 92. She's a tough lady. She recovered the fastest out of the relatives, and just been socially distancing. I have my Corona core group of people I've hung out with throughout the pandemic. So yeah, painting my wall. Just different things to keep myself busy while social distancing.
The wall looks great. It looks wonderful.
Thank you.
Excellent color choice.
Minda's been critiquing. She's been like our own little room raider here. She's been critiquing everybody's background. So
I love her flowers in the back. I guess I can't grow plants. I tried even the cactus, and I overwatered it. Yeah. Doesn't work.
When my wife and I were first married, we're now married 20 years, and we have 17-year-old twins. When we got married, we said, okay, let's start with a cactus. Let's see if we can keep a cactus alive. And if we can't do that, then we're in trouble. And in fact, we killed that cactus pretty fast. But somehow we made it with the twins. So we've gotten through. So we're assembled here today to talk about various aspects of Black media in America. We're going to use the new map and directory in the Black Media Initiative that Aaron runs as kind of the hook, but we want to hear from each of you about your work and what the work of Taunt and the Blue Media Group as well. But let's start with Aaron so he can give us a sense of the initiative, of the map, of the directory. It's so exciting. And we'll show on the screen, Aaron, the Black Media Initiative to get us started, and then you can lead us through. Lots of people all over the world are watching, so they'll want to get a little bit of background and understanding of this.
Sure. So the Black Media Initiative was launched by the Center for Community Media at the Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at CUNY this summer when I came on board, and we're following in the blueprint of the Latino Media Initiative, which began last year. Both of these, and with more to come, are designed to be a support system for community media outlets. So usually the way I describe them as, if you're in a larger city and you see a bunch of newsstands, news boxes, and you have your general market daily newspapers, but then you have weekly papers that target Asian, Indigenous, Black, Latino, Jewish, queer, Muslim, all of these different identity publications that may come out once a week, once a month, bi-weekly. We try to see what we can do at CCM to help these publications. Now, when it comes to Black media, that is a very broad swath of what we consider to be that. So weekly newspapers, podcasts, digital outlets, radio stations, TV stations, all Black owned or geared toward a Black audience in cities with sizable or markets with sizable Black populations. All of these are sort of the backbone of these communities. They deliver events, news, commentary, and documenting the Black experience, but they don't always get the credit in the larger media ecosystem for doing the work that they do. So part of my job is to elevate and amplify and uplift Black media, but also help Black news outlets find paths to sustainability by connecting them with various resources, with the many journalism organizations that CUNY works with, some of the grant makers and foundations, so on and so forth. The first big step we've taken towards that is the Black Media Map, in which we've tracked now more than 300 outlets. We were hovering around 300 when we first launched it last week, but so many people have come forward to be included on the map that now we're past 300 all across the country to see where exactly Black media is, where some of the highest concentrations are, where some of the strongest performing outlets are, where some of the newer places are, all of these things to kind of show that there's a very active Black media scene across the United States, and they deserve to be heard and amplified and, you know, shown what they're made of.
So let's take a look at that map, because it's a beautiful map to see so many different parts of America where there are Black media organizations. So talk about this a little bit. And as you said, it's not full yet. You're still adding more, including Minda's is going to be added on there. So.
Yeah, Minda is one of the 36 and counting folks who came and approached us in the last week, and so we have to go back on the back end and make sure that all those folks have a dot. But as you can see, you know, where you see Black media is generally where you see Black people in the United States. So of course, heavy concentrations in places like New York, Atlanta, Southern California, Northern California, of course. If you see some holes in the map, like let's say Utah or Montana, or for example, there may be situations like those where our researchers had searched and combed through, you know, turned over every rock and stone, looking to make sure that there was a Black media outlet there or not, and we didn't turn up anything. But I'll tell you what, in the last couple of months since we launched the Black Media Initiative, we've had a number of folks come from markets like those and say, like, hey, I think I want to start a community outlet in this place. I think, you know, this particular community needs some coverage. So what we're trying to do, part of what we're trying to do with the Black Media Initiative is see if we can help some of those people along, find the resources that they need to get something started. In the meantime, we know that there's a number of journalism organizations out there, either who grant funding or try to do some sort of networking or training, that need the resources to say, okay, where do these community outlets exist? That's where we come in, and we have this. We offer this resource. We also do our own research into Black media in terms of, you know, what are some partnerships that we can develop at CCM? What are some ways that we can help? Next February, either next February or sometime early next year, we haven't set a firm date yet, but we have a report coming out that assesses the state of Black media, where the, you know, newsrooms are in terms of productivity, what their wants and needs are, where they can innovate, where they can go forward, to kind of show, like, okay, is there staffing issue? Is there this? Is there that? What are, you know, trying to, again, always trying to diagnose where we can provide paths to sustainability for these community media outlets.
That is so great. So first, let me go to Minda and ask her about what it's like to see this map and to see all of these publications all across the country.
For me, it was really exciting when I found out about Aaron's work, because, you know, there is a dearth of Black media outlets in this nation, of Black leadership in the newsrooms, and, you know, also Black journalists are really leading the charge on rethinking what objectivity actually is. So to know that I'm not actually on this island doing my work alone was very comforting, and I'm just very thankful that he's doing this work.
That is great. Can you tell us a little bit more about Taunt? We love the name, and tell us about the origin of it and how you got started. And we'll show taunt.me on screen.
Yes, so the website is www.taunt.me. Taunt, the name comes from the fact that it really is a challenge to our local alt weekly to do better by our community. I had a bit of Louisville has been at the heart of a social justice uprising. We've been demanding justice for Breonna Taylor, who was a young Black woman who was unjustly murdered by the LMPD. and so our local, police division. So for me, as a Black woman, as a Black woman who grew up here in Louisville, these issues are very important to me. And to know that our local alt weekly really wasn't kind of providing us the coverage that we deserved. I noticed that you have John Lewis in your Twitter picture, and the same week that John Lewis passed away, the cover story for our local alt weekly was cat versus dogs, which do we like better? And they put his passing as a footnote. So that's really kind of why I felt like, someone needed to launch a publication that was a more accurate representation of our community and gave a voice to those who have been unaccounted for. So that's kind of where Taunt came out of. I announced July 1st that I was launching this publication. And, we've had more than 300 individuals donate to make this possible, so that from day one, I've been able to pay all of the writers, the photographers, the service providers. So not only are we saying, hey, these stories are important to tell, but these storytellers should be respected for their craft.
Got it. And if people go to tinyurl.com/fund Taunt, tinyurl.com/fund Taunt, or Taunt Me and go to the About section, you'll find here. So you've got more than 384 donors, and I'm sure there'll be more coming in today. Folks, let's put them over they're just $10 short of
We're $10 short.
Yeah, they're just short of their goal. So let's make that happen tonight. What a great opportunity to support a great publication. And tell us about Queer Kentucky and the connection to it.
So Queer Kentucky is our fiscal sponsor, and Queer Kentucky is committed to telling the stories of queer individuals within the state of Kentucky. And so, Taunt is a new publication, and Queer Kentucky is an established nonprofit. And they were very generous in being our fiscal agent so that we could have a nonprofit status. And through that relationship, I've committed to 20% LGBTQ plus representation. And that's across creatives, service providers, writers, anyone that we work with. And honestly, it hasn't been a difficult mark to hit, because if you are serving the Black community, if you're serving marginalized individuals, you're serving the queer community, So it's been a really, really wonderful relationship. And I am just so thankful to Spencer Jenkins, who's the founder of Queer Kentucky. And as you can imagine, in the state of Kentucky, it's very, very important to have voices like those represented by Queer Kentucky, like those represented by Taunt, because the national media really kind of wants to tell a very specific story about our state, and that's Trump country and disenfranchised coal miners. And there's just so much more here. And, I know earlier you said that the unaccounted for was a very beautiful turn of phrase, and I have Charles Booker to thank for that, who, ran a just kind of historic campaign against Amy McGrath to try to dethrone Mitch McConnell. And his whole ethos was like, I'm representing everyone from the hood to the holler, because those of us in Appalachia and those of us in the urban parts of the state like Louisville, we are all actually facing the same challenges. And so it's now time for us to put aside these lies and these stories that want to divide us and come together to really kind of fight for change in our communities.
Well, I have some news for you. You have gone over the amount right now. As you can see, you've made we did it live on TV. And we want everyone who hasn't made a donation, who wants to support Black media and the unaccounted and queer media, here's your chance by going right into the URL. I'm just going to put it on the screen here so that people have it. It's going to say Fund Taunt, and the link is now scrolling across the bottom right there. So it's tinyurl.com/fund Taunt. So join others in supporting Minda's work. So thank you for joining us.
Yes,
and we made that happen.
Thank you so much for donating. Every single donation goes directly towards paying creatives. I don't take any wages from the campaign for Taunt. I have a day job. I'm a professor. So everything goes back to the artists in our local community.
That is great. Let's bring Devon into the conversation, and thank you for being here, Devon. We'll just first of all, any thoughts about Taunt now that you've heard about it and the project, and then we want to hear about your project.
Yeah, I'm super excited about Taunt. I'm like, oh, I should have maybe gone back in time and found a way to raise money instead of bootstrapping for over a decade to make my project happen. But I'm happy to see that there's new and innovative ways for Black-owned media to find funding, because it's almost impossible to get someone that writes checks to believe in what we do. And the most important thing I think she said is that it goes back to those creatives, those writers, photographers, stylists, everyone that makes the media happen. It's so hard for minority groups, especially Black creatives, to get jobs at larger publications or even stay at a smaller publication that their talent grows, but how do you pay them to keep them and retain them? So it's so great to see that people want to support those creatives having a chance to exist and create their portfolios. So I'm gonna get taunted pretty soon. I'll log on.
Terrific. So now let's talk about Blue and talk about the Blue Life, Media Life, and the group that you have built.
Yeah, so there's a few things. So my company, Blue, the brand itself, is about a decade and a half old. It turns 15 next June. Blue Magazine proper. So the website you see up there now is bluemagazine.com. It's male-focused content around fashion, travel, and entertainment. I started it right here in this same apartment, not the same blue wall behind me. The room looked different when I started it. But I started, bootstrapped it with some friends. And basically I had friends that were creative people and they couldn't get work, right? Everyone said, what's your portfolio? What have you worked on before? Who have you dealt with before? And I said, well, you know what? If we can't get hired, let's create this platform for ourselves. So, a group of friends came together and volunteered their time, kind of like what's happened over at Taunt, but at least you're able to pay your writers. We couldn't pay our writers for the first 5 years. It was really just blood, sweat, and tears, and people, really believing in the brand, believing that Black men in media needed to have a fair voice and have a diverse voice. I think what happens is that we see music and we see hip hop and we see rap videos and we assume that every Black man lives his life or desires to live his life with fast cars and gold and big booty girls, right? But that's not necessarily, the whole picture of what the Black male experience is. So we wanted to show that, the Black guy is multidimensional, diverse, and had many different interests. So that's one platform. A few years later, we realized that we had a lot of Black women that were very interested in the content we put up. That's Willie McLean from the show Power. Right there, Scroll.in was our latest cover for Blue. So we decided to launch Bombshell by Blue, which is a women's focused platform. Different content, but audience is very, very similar. Millennials, Gen X, and Gen Z. And so that's where Blue Life Media Group came from. We were no longer just one platform. We had two platforms. And just this past September, we launched Shop Blue Life, where you can buy merch. So that our way of fundraising is getting people to buy merch, subscribe to the magazine. Before the pandemic, we were distributed about 3,000 barbershops. So luckily,
wow.
So we realized that Black men don't trust a lot of the talking heads on TV. Don't even trust their doctors, but they trust their barber. So we had a network of barbershop small businesses that we distributed a magazine to for free. And we sold, that access to them to advertisers. But because of COVID and, small businesses having to close down, we had to find a new way to get our content to our consumers. So we started offering active subscriptions. So somewhere on the site, there's a tab that says Shop Blue Life, and you can go on and get a subscription to the magazine. That network, we see Main Street affects media also, right? So we distributed small businesses because small businesses in diverse communities knows that we speak to them and speak for them and speak about them. We highlight their businesses, we highlight what they do. They close, then my distribution channel closes, and then how do I stay relevant and how do I pay my writers? So it's a trickle down. So there's so much talk about like small businesses in Main Street, but small media is part of small business and part of small Main Street. We tell the stories of those business owners when they first start out. Before they go to a mainstream publication, we're the one making them known. So we're just as important as your local mom and pop shop.
Very, very important. And so great to hear this. Let me bring Aaron into the conversation. Aaron, these are just two of the 300 plus stories that you are helping to amplify and tell the stories through the Black Media Initiative. First, reflect on both of these stories, please.
I mean, I think both and so many offer, or I don't want to call it an alternative perspective because that's just such a, that can be a dangerous term. These are perspectives that are part of the whole story of this country that don't always get amplified. If you look at newsrooms across the country, they are majority white. A lot of them are also majority straight as well. So you don't get a lot of Black perspectives. You don't get a lot of Indigenous perspectives. You don't get a lot of queer perspectives. You don't get a lot of, non-white, non-straight, stories being told on a larger scale. But you do have publications and you do have journalists and you do have forward-thinking entrepreneurs, so on and so forth, who have the drive and the will to get these stories out, but do not have the muscle or the backing of, your larger 7-day-a-week paper in town. So what do? That's where our center comes in. That's what CCM tries to do, is how do we elevate these stories, these media makers, these content providers to the level where they can be heard the most, can be read the most, so that when we do have a situation like a George Floyd, for example, or a Breonna Taylor, or, there are so many, and which is so unfortunate, but part of the reason why we have so many misunderstandings of various people here in this country is because we don't know the stories or the nuances or the stories of the communities that they come from. When something like a Breonna Taylor or a George Floyd happens, you get a lot of white journalists or people who are not of that community trying to tell these types of stories and getting it wrong sometimes, missing critical nuance, missing critical details of what a police police Black community relation is like in those particular cities. But you do have publications like the many that we try to document on the map and that we try to work with the Black Media Initiative, who know what the situation is, who already have had boots on the ground covering police community relations, covering the Black community. But when a larger cable news outlet, for example, comes calling and they want to put people on the panel, they usually call on the people from those 7-day-a-week papers or, whatever, who cannot offer the kind of critical detail that a Black newspaper or a Black digital outlet may be able to provide. So these are all big picture questions that all relate back to diversity in newsrooms, that relate to diversity in our industry, period, that relate to how we perceive each other, across different spectrums and whatnot. How do we get to these conversations so that we can have these hard conversations around amplifying Black stories and amplifying non-white stories, to be perfectly honest, and getting people to understand that it's important to, this is a critical part of getting our audiences to understand how our country works, how our cities work, how our communities work.
Well, this is just amazing. And we were looking at that list, and you have television, you have radio, you have websites, you have newspapers, you have all kinds of publications. And you said you're going to be, so can you explain what you've done this week versus the report that's going to come out in the spring?
So in addition to the map that came out and the report that is coming in a few months, we also did 2 different trainings this week for interested entrepreneurs, for Black publishers, for journalists of color who want to look for new ways to get content out to their audiences. Without getting too deep into the nuts and bolts of it, a big part of, well, I mean, we're talking in the audience from the journalists, right? We all know about the big drive for subscriptions and getting people to asking people to please pay for the content so that my writers can get paid, my fact checkers can get paid, so on and so forth. We had a workshop around that, around the Substack platform. Substack, of course, if you're an independent journalist or you may have a team and you hop on this platform, which is very similar to a Medium or WordPress, and you ask people to subscribe to your content and you dole it out on however frequent a basis you see that's warranted to do that. If you look at what's happened with Substack in the last couple of months, we've seen a number of, again, mostly white, mostly male, mostly straight journalists leaving big organizations and kind of striking out on their own on Substack. What we didn't see, however, was we know that there are a number of Black journalists and journalists of color using Substack, but they're not getting those big headlines and big media watchdog type stories. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to find a Black journalist that was actively using Substack and was successful at it and was targeting a Black community and show what she did and show that to an audience who came to our workshop to see if they're interested in doing the same thing, which is exactly what we did. We invited Dana James, who is the founder of Black Iowa News. She started it this year, and it's in the title of her publication. She targets Black Iowans with news about the coronavirus and other things affecting Black people in the state of Iowa. And she does it via Substack. She had to ask the hard question of asking people, hey, can you please pay for this? And people pay for it. And so I wanted to show people okay, can Dana be an example of how you do this? The other real quick I'll discuss workshop that we did was around newsletters. We asked Michael Grant of Get Current Studio, who's also a teaching fellow at Google News Lab, and he's just as passionate about Black media as so many of us are. So he was just perfect to work with. Shout out to Michael if you're listening. I owe you another email. But Michael was just great at showing people how to get a newsletter started. Now, I know that newsletters have been talked about for many, many years now. But one thing that a lot of people don't understand is, one, we have a lot of folks who are sort of new to entrepreneurship and starting their own publication and are not as caught up with some of these things that a lot of larger publications have been doing for years. But also another thing we see with a lot of community media outlets especially is that some of these larger industry trends have sort of passed them by. It's not because it's no fault of the publishers and the community outlets themselves. I have a slight theory that a lot of these industry trends tend to favor, the folks who create these new platforms and things like that. They tend to favor the bigger outlets and overlook these community outlets that serve communities of color. And I don't want to say it's intentional, but I do think, there's something to be said about how so many times community outlets that serve communities of color are overlooked and bypassed by some of these larger conversations that we have in our industry around journalism and content delivery. So another part of what I'm trying to do with the Black Media Initiative is help some of these community outlets get caught up with what's current in our industry so that they'll always be forevermore included in some of these larger conversations.
Awesome. You should know that Craig Newmark has retweeted this video right now. So I'm sure we'll be getting a nice audience boost from that. And also, I put on the screen here Black Iowa News. So it's blackiowanews.substack.com. So please check out what Dana is doing. I think that's terrific that you were able to support the folks who are doing Substacks. If you read the mainstream news, you get the feeling that only white people are leaving and starting their own things, and that Black folks aren't doing it, and they've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, and so we've had to innovate like our whole time in this country, and that just we invented so much. And we still don't get credit for it. Anyway, sorry, Sree. Sorry.
That's true.
Go ahead, Minda, your comments.
I said, yes, please give Black people a check for innovating. I did want to just build on something that Aaron was saying about mainstream publications, national publications, as they're descending on these communities where, the news is happening. As a Black woman writer in Louisville, I was approached by some national publications to write about what was happening with Breonna Taylor. And as a Black writer, I felt very uncomfortable because these were larger, predominantly white publications that I did not have a relationship with that were asking me to write about something that was like very personal, very intimate and personal to my community, and a very sensitive matter. And I felt some type of way that these publications hadn't, up until this moment, tried to forge these relationships or seek out my perspective or elevate Black women's voices. But then all of a sudden now they wanted me to be very comfortable writing for their audiences and writing for editors in which, you know, I had no relationship with. And so I think that's another reason why it's really important that you have a diverse newsroom, so that not only do you have diverse perspectives, but you have individuals from the communities that you're trying to represent that have integrity and that are representative of that community and care about these communities on a deeply emotional level.
Yeah, I want to reiterate that also. I think part of it is that there isn't value given to Black-owned media in general or Black writers in general, right? It's almost a lot of, and I don't want to go too deep, but it's like kind of tokenism, right? So oftentimes they'll say, oh, I had my Black writer in the newsroom, or I had my Black, you know, photographer I used for this issue. Instead of us being ingrained and entire ecosystem of creating media, whether it's a national, you know, outlet or a local news channel, we should not just be tokens. You know, Aaron made the joke that, you know, we've been innovating since we arrived in this country. Our existence is one experiment in innovation and survival, right? So we've already proven ourselves, and I don't understand, like, when we show up for an interview or an opportunity, we have to prove ourselves again and even more. And then again, they ask for the receipts. And if you've never given me an opportunity in the past, how do I show up, you know, to do this thing for your publication if you never gave me the chance to get my receipts? Also, there's a responsibility that we have to hold accountable Black people in power positions to actually exercise that power. And although it may be risky and although it may be tough, it's more than just a paycheck you're getting as to why you're there. You owe your position that you're in right now to hundreds and thousands and millions of other people before you. So if you have a chance to give budget to smaller Black-owned media outlets, then give us the budget, right? Like, you just give us the budget and it's okay. And trust that we're going to show up and deliver what you need. So we'll show up again and again and again to prove our place in those outlets, or, you know, for those budgets. I'm big on the give me the money thing, because I've done so much of the work already. You know, so many others like me have done so much of the work, and we've done it with pennies on the dollar. And they're like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. I can't believe you did that. These are great images. Yeah, I know. So give me the money. More. I reached out to Aaron because I'm working with some others, you know, Black-owned outlets on something called the Black-owned Media Equity and Sustainability Institute. And we've come together and we're asking for money. So not just for positions, writing positions in the newsroom, we also want to make sure advertisers are holding themselves up to this promise, especially right now. Everyone made these statements around, we support Black lives and, you know, no hate for profit. And I'm like, so, okay, what'd you do with the budget? Because we're here. You know, Aaron has a list of 300. Black-owned Media Institute has a list of 200. So together you have 500 opportunities to deliver that money that you said you had, and you haven't delivered it yet. You know, where's it at? You know, where is it? So the question of diversity really is about where you're putting your money, not just hiring one person and then putting all the weight on their shoulders in your organization and setting them up for failure. No, that's not how that works.
Because if it's just one person, you're not empowering that person to be able to, like, speak up, push back against authority, and actually have any sort of significant leadership and or power or impact within that organization. Like, it takes more than one. And I promise you there's more than one of us qualified out there to be at this table.
And we've certainly
I'm sorry.
No, I was saying that we've seen where there have been multiple examples of major publications where there's one Black reporter or writer, and they feel like, you know, the management takes credit for having that one person, but that puts a lot of pressure on that one person to speak for all Black people and to represent kind of the Black community when there isn't one Black community, right? So you have all these different voices, and it's important to get them on there. So I can't believe it's already 40 minutes into the conversation. I told Aaron this is about 40 minutes, but we have so much to cover. So hope you can stick around for a little while longer. We have lots of comments and questions coming in, people saying hello from around the world, and also people who may not know the terminology. So here's a question saying, what is an local alt weekly? That's we know what that is, but why don't you tell us, Minda? What does that mean?
Yeah, so it just means that, we are not a mainstream publication. So we're independent, which means we're newer, we're smaller, and we're not backed essentially by a wealthy benefactor, because if you dig deep enough, most of your mainstream media publications are absolutely underwritten by the wealthy. So we are community founded, community supported. We're smaller, we're independent, and we're alternative. So that means that we're telling stories that don't generally get told.
Great. I want to know if Blood Honey is related to Minda Honey. But
No, there's no reason why we can't be.
Doug Levy watching in California. Great topic. Thank you for doing this. Thank you, Doug, for watching. Jonathan Borstein is watching from the East Village. He's watched 254 episodes in a row, has been a guest host on this show as well. And my dad is watching from Kerala in India. He says, we went from daily episodes to every few days. Hi, Acha, love you. Pradnya, who's been a former guest, is watching from Springfield, Maryland. Diane says, thank you for putting this important show together. And she's tagging at Far Flung Phil. So everyone, please tag a friend. They can watch live or later on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and LinkedIn. It'll just start as soon as we're off the air. It'll restart. Aparna says, hello from LA. Glad to see you.
Hey, Aparna.
And Aparna is a great person who has worked in the mayor's office, worked at the New York Times, and she understands the importance of diversity. Pradnya is tagging her friends. Everybody, please follow what Pradnya's example. And Lambert says, today's session is quite timely as I received a challenge from a 10 friend today. Is there an African-American owned news or media channel that covers African stories? I humbly don't want to read African stories on BBC, CNN, French channels, etc. I know in Aaron's list in the Black Media Initiative map and directory, there are Somali audience publications. Are there Pan-African, African-American, or Black media outlets that you can think of?
I know that there are a few individuals in my Google News Initiative cohort, Startup Bootcamp, that are also African founded and led, and focused on African communities, whether it's Pan-African or individual countries. So if you just Google News Initiative cohort, those 24 individuals will come up, and the wonderful work that they're doing.
Great. Aaron, your thoughts?
I was just going to say, I cannot name one off the top of my head. However, I know where some of them are. So DC has a few that cover the Ethiopian population, because there is a huge Ethiopian population there in DC. New York has a few. California has a few. I want to just very quickly say that when we talk about Black media, we're talking across the diaspora, right? So the historical connotation around Black media is that it was media, usually a newspaper, that targeted an African-American audience, which is fine, which is great. That is where many of the Black press began, around, things like the Great Migration, or just as certain cities all across the country became populated with African Americans. But that became limiting in a way, because it did discount publications that serve Caribbean audiences, African audiences. It also kind of, in a way, left out the intersection of faith and race, right? So whether that's a Catholic publication or a Muslim publication or something like that. So it's been my part of this is broadening our definition of Black media to include publications serving African audiences, immigrant audiences, wherever, like I said, across the diaspora, whether it's faith-based or secular or whatever the case may be. Also business publications, tech publications. We have a number of niche publications covering, that may be Black owned or Black focused, but cover a specific subject that is not news. So, not like general news like crime and business and stuff like that, but maybe like a hyper focus on a specific industry or a hyper focus on a specific topic like music or hip hop or fashion or luxury this or something like that. That to me is trying to make this as inclusive as we can.
Sure. Diane, who's a great friend of the show, is tuning in from South Jersey, where she works at advancingdiversity.org and Jack Myers Biz. So maybe you should connect and tell them about your work and also how maybe you could all work together. Paula's watching from Tallahassee, Florida. She's part of our wonderful team at Digimentors. And by the way, Blood Honey's watching from London in the United Kingdom. And Miriam's watching from Hell's Kitchen in New York City.
In New York.
And Stefan is watching from Ramsey, New Jersey. And Sneha's watching, says, what a cool show. Excited to be joining in today from California. She and Stefan are both with our Digimentors team. And again, Stefan is just tagging people. Everyone, please do that. My mom is watching. Hi, Emma, I love you.
Hi, Mom.
Yeah, in the South Asian community, as they do also in some parts of the Black community, they'll say auntie for everybody.
Yes,
you don't know them, so this is so now you have an auntie, folks. New auntie. A partner says, "Rock on, Minda, for paying your writers. Really important that you're doing that, and yay for making Taunt's goal." And Jonathan says, great fact, Black folks trust their barbers. And we had a terrific episode with our friend Antonio M. Johnson, who has written a book called You Next. It's about Black barbershops and the Black barbershop culture. And it's a book that he put together and chronicled the story of Black barbershops. And it was an episode about 2-3 months ago in our archive, which you can find at youtube.com/SreeNet. It was such a great learning experience for all of us to learn from him about the book. And the book is called You Next, which is, of course, what they say at the barbershop. They say You're Next. So we love that. Rick is saying why equity matters. Mm-hmm. And let's see, there's just still so many comments coming in. Consumers demand that advertisers spend X% of their budget on Black media. I know that Devon has thought about aspects of this. So Devon, over to you.
Yeah, so 2 parts, Linda. Yes, I'm so happy you decided to keep your day job, but also use your platform to pay writers. And that's so amazing. You didn't have to make that sacrifice, but it's great that you're making that sacrifice. And yes, consumers can, because consumers, especially Black consumers, we over-index in every category of consumer consumption, right? And if we knew or we were informed that our dollars are not going back to our community, they're going to publications that are owned or underwritten by benefactors that don't actually speak to us as a community, they can speak up and say, I will not support this, I will not buy this product because my dollars are not going back to my community. Like, I am buying this thing or giving this money because I'm assuming you care about me as a consumer or a person, and not just, a dollar or a deposit into the account. So I think through citizen journalism and through these smaller media outlets, it's our job also to inform our audience where the dollars are going and where they're not going, and allow them the opportunity to speak up and advance, Black-owned media in that way. But absolutely, consumers can absolutely choose where they put their money. They have to speak up. I'm not just, holding the media industry accounted. I'm also holding Black community accountable too for how we spend our dollars, and that's never more important, during Black Lives Matter. We mentioned a few times the LGBTQ community, and I think that oftentimes it's almost easier to get people to catch on that you got to support LGBTQ issues. When you say Black issues, there's always a resistance, from that. And I think we don't have to be shy about being Black. We don't have to be shy about living in our communities. We don't have to be shy about the value of our dollar. I think we've been suppressed for so long that we couldn't speak up. And we were told that we weren't valuable, but now we know there's too much information out there for us to know that we're valuable, and we can demand better.
Awesome. Sunny Slaughter, a dear friend and guest on this show multiple times. She was on our 250th episode. She was on our other episodes, including our episode where we talked for the first time after the killing of George Floyd. She's watching and says hello all. Blood Honey says, unfortunately not related to Minda Honey, but she does look like my cousin. And Jonathan points out that the first alt weekly he ever read was The Village Voice. Lori White, a dear friend who's been on this show multiple times, is watching from Rhode Island. Any Rhode Island publications on Aaron's map? So I don't see one here, but you'll be looking, right?
Yeah, give me 2 minutes, Sree, and I will. Yeah, I'll put up our back end and see if there's something there.
Terrific, thank you. Rose says, "Isn't there Africa report?" And then Antonio Johnson's watching. We told you about Antonio, who wrote "You're Next," the Black Barbershop book. So he's watching. Blood African media resources. Historically, Black-owned newspapers like the Amsterdam News and Chicago Defender, even Ebony, were vital in the global African diaspora. I didn't realize that. So that's great to hear that they played a role in that. And go ahead.
I was going to say, Sree, yes, there is one in Rhode Island that is the Providence American.
Awesome. So great for Lori to know that. She's president of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce. And thank you for asking, and that's great. And Blood Honey says, Africa is a country, is a current Pan-African online platform I enjoy reading. They're based in South Africa. I have seen that too. They will call out people when they describe Africa as if it's one country instead of obviously so many dozens and dozens of countries. And Antonio's watching from Atlanta, which of course I'm sure is home to many publications in the map that Aaron has. Ronisha is watching from Brooklyn. Welcome.
Hey. Brooklyn, that's where I'm at.
Looking super cute in that LinkedIn photo.
I know she has a great photo. She and I had a
Ronisha, is that your last name? And if it's pronounced Bing, that's got to be one of the great names.
It is.
It competes with Honey as a last name, which is. And Diane says, I would be thrilled to connect with the panelists. So please, if you folks can just grab her email address or connect with me. She's the one who's working with the Advancing Diversity. So please do connect with her. And Bob Anthony, who's also one of our friends and who's been a co-host of the show many times, says Rosalind McClimont does amazing work, so great to know. And Rose says, great friend, we work together. And on Black Journalist newsletters, Patrice Peck's Coronavirus News for Black Folks on Substack. I'm a fan, a subscriber. Vital news from across the diaspora on 5 continents. So please check out Patrice Peck's work, really important. And then Lambert's tagging so many folks and saying that these folks are about to launch Africa Freedom Network online platform for news on Africa. And Antonio's asking for everyone's social handle. So Antonio, I'll just put it on the screen here for you to see. Otherwise, when I take this off here, you'll be able to see it as well. Devon Johnson is Blue, BLEU, and Minda Honey, you can see, and Aaron K. Foley. So please do connect with them. And Laurie says, I'm familiar with the Providence American. It's been on for a very long time. Thanks, Aaron. Great to hear that. And Rajan says he forgot that this was on. Apologies. I'll watch the replay later. No apologies needed. Just great to have everybody here. We only have a few minutes left. We wanted to get from Aaron a question. I have a question about Detroit. You had one of the coolest titles of all time, Chief Storyteller for the city of Detroit. How did that come about? What did that mean? I remember when you were appointed, that made a nice buzz about that. So talk about that, please. And Detroit, my God, how many stories in Detroit?
Yeah, so here's what happened. I was editor of a Black magazine that was incidentally called Black Magazine in Detroit. I had a long career as someone who is very outspoken about Detroit in no matter what journalism job I held. Detroit is a city that has been battered over and over again in the national media, in the international media, And there are, quite frankly, very few voices, very few Black native Detroit voices that are able to speak up about what Detroit really is, why Detroit became the way it is, why the city looks the way it looks, and so on and so forth. All of the newsrooms are very white in Detroit. The city is 80% Black. I will stand up on the rooftops and shout about that for the longest time. But I did everything I could as someone who wanted to amplify the stories of native Black Detroiters like myself. That caught the attention of the mayor of Detroit, who the city government in Detroit had a very robust media services department, which is your folks in any city government who are the folks who put together your public access channels. So your audio visual tech, your camera people. In our case, it was also the social media people, the photographers and stuff like that. You had almost like a miniature, small scale TV station within, actually we did, it was a TV station because we have 4 cable channels, a whole broadcast TV staff within the city government. What they didn't have was a strong digital output. So the mayor sat down with me, well, actually his chief of staff sat down with me, a former TV reporter, and she said, we want to do this thing where we do what you've always done, which is amplify the stories of Detroiters and do it on our own platform. And the original job title was going to be something like director of content and stuff like that. And I thought that was a BS title, and I just could imagine looking at it on a business card and people being like, what the F is this? I said, if I'm going to tell stories about Detroit, it should be a storyteller. But if I'm also going to be a director and a manager, I should be chief storyteller. Because I need, well, we talk about getting paid, right? No, just kidding. No, it was the job title blew up in a way that I did not expect, because Delta Airlines and Microsoft, prior to me working for Detroit, there were like 3 companies, Delta, Hewlett Packard, and Microsoft, that had a chief storyteller, and they were more about like branding and PR. But I was working in media, so like I remember Googling the term at the time, and like only 3 hits coming up. After, though, once other cities saw that you could like hire someone with a media background to, what do you want to do? Do you want to show what your city really looks like? Do you want to show your city in a different light? Do you want to show, people, my thing was like, I don't see enough people of color in Detroit media, but you're going to give me, like, if the mayor's office is going to give me enough people to kind of have like my own little newsroom to do so, then I am going to tell I almost cussed. I'm going to tell every story I can about every young Black millennial, every gay person I know, every Black woman that opens a business. And we're going to do this. We're going to have great photography. We're going to have great video. We're going to have great words. And that's exactly what we did. We were so successful at it that the Detroit Free Press added someone that tried to emulate what I did. The Cranes Detroit Business also added someone who has a neighborhoods reporter. Two different publications in Detroit saw that we had neighborhoods reporting. They added neighborhoods coverage. Every publication in Detroit, suddenly, all of a sudden, the TV stations, things like that, they saw how much traffic and attention we were getting by amplifying the stories of Detroit, that suddenly you saw a lot more stories of Detroiters in some of our mainstream publications. And I like to think I influenced that somewhat. But also other cities saw what we were doing. City of Tampa hired a chief narrator or something like that. Atlanta hired one. Denver hired one. So a few other cities that I can't think of right now, all have sort of emulated this. I love doing the job. I love Detroit, but a few things came calling. I did a fellowship at Stanford that also, what I was doing there caught their attention. And then I sort of parlayed what I was doing at Stanford into what I'm doing now at CUNY. So Detroit is always in my heart. Shout out to the entire city. I still put the city on my back, but I'm here in New York now and doing what I do. So.
All right, New York's gain. I do want to ask you 2 quick things before we let you go and move on to our others. First is your image on this First of all, I love that you're wearing a mask, but I love that color. Tell us what's going on there and what's behind that. It says, would I be brutally murdered if I visit Detroit? That's like one of the things that people say about Detroit, or how did you pick that? What's it from?
The photo was taken inside a bar in Brooklyn called Good Judy. I was there with, I bet Esther is watching, but Nick isn't because Nick's not on Twitter. But Esther, this is when Nick and I were doing Jello shots at Good Judy, and I was a little bit tipsy, and I took a picture in front of this awesome magenta background with a mask on. Will I be brutally murdered if I
explain for folks what the term Good Judy means? Like, you can't just gloss over that.
Yeah, I need an education, so please tell me.
A good Judy is, I guess you would call it queer slang for, just a good friend, a ride or die, person that you can confide in, your roll dog, I guess you can call it, and it's a new, and the bar kind of takes that term. I think they've got some like Judy Garland imagery there. But no, it's a newer place that in like the last days in New York, before it got really cold, my friend Nick and I would go there just to kind of like sit on the patio and drink and just try to make the most of the last bit of warm weather in New York before it started getting dark at 5 o'clock. Will I be brutally murdered if I visit Detroit? So that was a headline of a piece I wrote for Jalopnik back in like 2013, I believe. 2013 was when the city of Detroit filed bankruptcy. And it was the largest municipality to file bankruptcy at the time. And of course, 2009 was already brutal for Detroit when the whole country was in a recession, but it was twice as bad because the automotive industry had tanked. And we saw nothing but ruin porn and bad headlines. And there was an infamous Dateline NBC story about people lined up to get raccoon meat in Detroit and stuff like that. So there was just all this negative imagery around Detroit. And I had written this, I was, me being outspoken as I had written several things for Jalopnik, just kind of like on my soapbox saying like Detroit is not what you think it is. So I think I might have written this like around like the auto show or something like that, when there's a lot of influx of visitors moving there. And and that was what the headline was. It was just kind of debunking some of the myths around crime and whatnot that, quite frankly, are associated with majority minority cities such as Detroit. We are 80% Black, but because we are mostly Black, people just think as soon as I step foot in the city, I'm going to get robbed. I'm going to get murdered. It's just like coming to America when they leave out all the luggage and all the kids snatch all the stuff. A lot of people think Detroit is like that because the city is mostly Black. So that headline was originally in Jalopnik. Someone in Germany read that piece and asked if they could use it in a textbook for students learning about urbanism or something like that in German. And so the headline in my header on Twitter is a screenshot from that textbook.
Wow. What is see, you're a great
and
storyteller.
It's actually right behind me on this bookshelf, but yeah.
Okay. That's great. Thank you so much. Everyone, please follow Aaron K. Foley on Twitter. And let's go now to Devon to talk about your kind of thoughts on how people can get involved with your publication, and just give us the contact information again of the websites. You have multiple websites, and I'll throw your Twitter onto the screen as well.
Yeah, I'm a big Instagram guy, not much of a Twitter guy, but you can do Twitter up there. It's the same.
It's the same handle, right?
Oh, look at me on that Twitter. I haven't been on Twitter in so long. That's me all cleaned up. You guys can actually support Blue by going to shopbluelife.com, and you can subscribe there. We also have some really cool merch that you can purchase. Again, that's Shop Blue Life, shopbluelife.com. I'll leave you with that. America's greatest export is Black culture. We talked about the Black diaspora and Black outlets across the world, different countries. The truth is, Black American culture leads culture globally, and so the more we invest in the Black community, the more we invest in Black people around the world, and the more we can unite them. So I just say support Black-owned media, support Black businesses, Black people support each other, and use the tools that are here for us. And I'll leave it on that.
That is awesome. Check out bluemagazine.com, and Devon Blue is also his IG handle. So do check him out on IG as well. And then I have to ask you, what's behind you on your wall? You've got multiple degrees and certificates, and tell us what's going on there.
Wow, you really dig into the backgrounds here. So I went to Harvard for grad school. I graduated in 2017, so that is my diploma behind me. I did a journalism program at Harvard, and I got a master's in journalism. My undergrad is Seton Hall, but I didn't hang that one up. It's on the floor. I went to grad school about 20 years after I graduated college. I'm an old man. I'm 20 years in the game, in the media game here. But yeah, having your own platform and hiring writers, I had to learn how to become a better writer. And what's a better story than say you went to Harvard? So I started with telling a better story of myself in order to hire other writers. So yeah. And that's my office sofa I'm really proud of back there that I got. I bought it online, and it
well, we're proud of you, and thank you for being here. We're so grateful to you, and thank you for sharing your story tonight. Let's go to Minda, and we'll show her Twitter feed as she's talking as well. So go ahead, Minda. Tell us your final thoughts.
Oh, well, I just want to thank everyone so much for inviting me tonight, and also for getting Taunt's fundraiser over the $20,000 mark. If you haven't had a chance to donate yet, don't hesitate to do so. Like I said, every single penny goes to our writers and our creatives, and it is absolutely making a difference in Louisville, Kentucky, particularly right now, because so many of our folks in the creative industry were hit very hard by the pandemic and lost many opportunities. So I feel very honored and privileged that I can, help people kind of get that rent paid in 2020. So please, please, please donate. And I promise that you will be supporting a Louisvillian.
That is so cool. And then look at all the places she's written: Long Read, Vice, Playboy, Oxford American, Guardian, Washington Post, and elsewhere. And check out taunt.me. And then you've got even your agent's handle in there. So that's great.
So that other agents don't hit you up. You got to let them know you're spoken for.
That's pretty cool. So there's something that I have to think about, like how would you say that? There's like an update on the Beyonce song, right? Like put a ring on it, put the agent's name on it on your Twitter bio.
Kayla put a ring on it. She locked me down. I am a writer with representation.
Nice. And we that's so important that our minority folks get all the same benefits and opportunities as mainstream writers who get so much of the publicity. Just before you go, there are so many comments. I just want to show some of them very, very quickly. Chantrice says, I love Taunt Louisville. So that is awesome. Antonio is smiling and following everybody. Sunny Slaughter says, thank you for amplifying the voices, faces, and lens of Black people across the diaspora. I'm looking forward to connecting with all of you. Folks, you need to connect with Sunny Slaughter. Check her out on Twitter and please connect with her. Aparna says, Detroit plus Jello shot, love. What happens in Detroit stays in Detroit, I presume. Diane says, I will track down their email so I can connect with these folks. Their partnerships and lots of opportunities across media, marketing, and advertising industries. So everyone, please connect. The Generous Gentleman says hello. And Rahajan says, no such thing as too old to be in school. No such thing at all. And I think that's important. And if I may say that Devon Shirt says self-made, but no one's self-made. Everyone is here based on the work and effort of folks who came before us. And that's why that map, that directory are so important for all of us to understand where all of us have the debt that we owe to folks who did the pioneering work. I know on your map we have one of the African American publications out of Portland, and we had one of the editors, the publishers, and talking about what it's like to have a black paper in Portland, Oregon. You can imagine, the atmosphere there. And we talked with him live on the air on this show a few months ago. And by the way, things are still boiling over in Portland, but we just don't hear as much about it. And that's why we have the show to cover stories. Please, folks, everybody's watching, thank you for joining us. What a great group of speakers here tonight. I learned so much. I also had fun, and we'll be back again. I'll just before we go, I want to tell everybody that we have other shows that we want to tell you about. This Sunday, we have the New York Times Read Along, where we've been reading the New York Times out loud for 5 years on Sunday mornings, the print edition, and we're being joined by a pioneer woman journalist who was one of the first female editors at the New York Times, and her name is Nancy Newhouse, and she'll be with us at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So please join us live or later on these platforms. And we also want to tell you about our friends at She's on Call. Dr. Sujana and Marina host various doctors talking about everything from COVID and so much more. The show is called She's on Call. So please check them out, and please follow them as well. And before we let our audience go, we just so grateful to everybody for all the comments that are continuing to come in, and just want to read those very quickly. And Rahajan says, thank you, everyone. Blessings to all of you and your families during this difficult time. Please stay safe, healthy, and strong. And Sunny says, you need to put that Seton Hall paper up and rep New Jersey. Jersey girl, look at that. He's picking it up right now. He's good. Nice. That is so cool. And look at this. Sean Tree says, Minda is a national treasure. Wow, that's lots of pressure on there. And Jonathan says, enjoyed the show. Adieu. And thank you all so much for being with us. Really glad to have you all here. Thank you for your support, everybody. Please check out our archives. We have 253 other episodes. And if you have ideas, including our guests, for other people whose voices we should be amplifying, please let us know. We'd love to have them on a future episode of this show. We are very, very grateful. And do check out everybody's shows, platforms. So a reminder, Aaron, check out Aaron's Black Media Initiative at the Newmark School. And it's so great that Craig is watching and tweeting us, Craig Newmark. Devon is shopbluelife.com and blackownedmedia.org. So do check that out. And Minda is at taunt.me. Check out all the important work that she's doing, pioneering work in the hometown of Breonna Taylor. And we certainly think of Breonna and George Floyd and everyone else who's been killed in this terrible, terrible year. With that, everybody, thank you so much. We'll say goodnight.